dead battery again? Listen, I don't have time for this, and I know you don't either. So today I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to find out if you have a parasitic draw and what circuit is being the bad one. I'm Rachel DeBarros, and this is Gearhead Diva. Well, look at you guys getting all comfortable up under my hood here. Well, now that you're here, you are volunteering your services, and we're gonna figure out what is going on, because if you're watching this, I know we're not the only ones that have gotten up in the morning only to find a dead battery morning after morning, like some electrical chupacabra comes down in the night and sucks the life energy out of our battery and disappears without a trace. Well, today we're catching up. We're putting a stop to these nighttime shenanigans. Let's cover the basics, because in the past, I've actually found times when I thought I had a parasitic draw, it was actually something else. So first things first, hop in the car and just take a look at all your knobs and switches. And this is the time where, in anticipation of our test, you should turn everything off, and that's radios, dome lights, any type of parking lights. If you have stuff plugged into the cigarette lighter, well, move those things out as well. Unplug them, leave them on your seat. So let's assume everything is off on your car. Your instrument panel is not really telling you anything out of the ordinary. When you close your doors, everything seems to shut. The car seems to go to sleep. Let's move on with probable culprit number 2, which is usually your battery. More times than not, it's actually your battery that needs to be replaced. Probably the most important thing is checking these terminals. I can't tell you how many times a problem that seems to be really complicated, really convoluted, you're going down a bunch of rabbit holes, and it turns out it's just dirty terminals. This is the source of a lot of problems down the line. So taking a look at mine, yeah, okay, I admit they're not the cleanest, but they're not horrific enough to start, any kind of problems with charging. The more corrosion that you have building up between your cable clamp and your terminal, the tougher it is for that signal to travel. It builds up resistance. To be able to move on to the test, you need a fully charged battery. So I have my multimeter here, and we have it set to 20 volts. That's going to read up to 20 volts. So what we're hoping to get is something in the neighborhood of 12.6. And let's take a look. It looks like, yes, 12.6. So that's test number 1 for the battery. Without these battery tests, it doesn't really make much sense to move on to the parasitic draw test, because you're not going to get accurate readings, and it's going to be really tough to pinpoint where your problem's really coming from. Well, for these 2 next tests, we're going to run them back to back. And then this first one is a load test. So while holding the probes onto the battery terminals, we're going to start the car. And we want to make sure that the voltage does not fall below 10. So keep your eye hawkeyes. Help me out here. I'm going to hold the probes while you guys watch this meter. So right here. Success. So I don't think I saw that fall below 10, which means we have enough volt cranking amps to get the car started. Now, if you do this test and it does fall below 10, time for another battery. So let's move on to the next test real quick. While the car is at idle, we have everything off in the car while you do these tests. No heaters. I know it's like super cold, but I'm just going to position the probes, and let's just check out what our charging situation here. And you want to see anything in the neighborhood of 14. So everything is looking pretty good. Finally, it's time for the much anticipated, much talked about parasitic draw test. And I know it's like really tempting to just kind of like fast forward through all that like boring battery stuff. Well, now we can prep the vehicle for the actual parasitic draw test. And all that means is we're going to try and replicate the state of the car as it sits overnight, or maybe it's sitting at work and you're having trouble getting home. So we want the car to completely fall asleep. And depending on how old old or new your car is, how fancy it is, this could take different amounts of time. So for older cars, something like this 2008 Hummer, it doesn't have a ton of bells and whistles. Probably half an hour is safe, but to play it really safe, I'm going to let this sleep for about an hour. Those of you with newer cars than that, well, I would recommend 2 hours. We do have to access all the fuse boxes. So this is a time where before we prep the car, find out where they are. For this car, the only one we have to worry about is the one under the hood. But for newer cars or cars with more features, well, you're definitely going to have one inside the car, one or two or more inside the car. And just look in your owner's manual. It's going to specify all the locations. So you want to pull off all the covers and just kind of get them ready to go. So now the next thing you start thinking about is like, okay, so we test the fuse box under the hood, and now let's do the ones inside, and you open the door. Well, that's going to wake the car up, and I don't want to be waiting another 2 hours. I don't know about you. So this is how I do it. So basically open your doors and manually latch them. And after that, you want to check your doors and make sure that you don't have any door switches in addition. As you can see, when you press it down, that actually controls your courtesy or your dome light. So if you go ahead and latch all the doors shut, but you leave this switch out, well, you're going to have a parasitic current draw just from your courtesy light. So you want to use a block of wood. You can do cardboard, masking tape, depending on how stiff that switch is. And you want to make sure that they're all pressed down. You want to take your fob and just lock it. And the other note are these key fobs. A lot of times, if you have the ones with the proximity feature, well, your car, as soon as you get close to it, is going to start looking for that key. So you want to be sure you take this key far away, like, don't chuck it or anything, but take it inside the house. Make sure you don't bring it anywhere inside the car. You should be good to go after 2 hours. So now we sit and wait. Wakey, wakey. No, just you, not the car. The car stays asleep. So I let this sit for about an hour, so I think we're ready to start. And we're going to access our first fuse box here under the hood. And although this is really the only fuse box we have to worry about on this car, we've actually prepped the car as if we had some more inside. And there. Leave that there for reference. And I'm going to position it here so we all can see, especially those of us with more mature eyes, mature yet experienced eyes. There we go. So here we have all of our fuses, and you're going to notice a couple different styles. These are probably the most familiar. These are just like your regular blade style, and then they come in the mini or standard size, and then you're going to notice these J case or cartridge style fuses right there. So we're going to start with the easy stuff, the stuff we're familiar with, which is just these blade ones. And again, we want to check every single fuse until we find the problem. And there's two main ways to do this. Kind of like the old way I used to do it was let the car fall asleep, hook your multimeter in series, you could disconnect this, and you can actually read your current draw right there. You're always going to have some current draw because there's virtual power, memory settings, all that kind of stuff. If you have a 0 current draw, it's probably because your test equipment is broken. It's you don't have a special no current draw car. So the number you should really be worried about is anything over 50 milliamps. 50 milliamps, then you know you definitely have a parasitic draw. But I don't do it that way anymore, especially for newer cars that, modules talk to each other, CAN bus cars. And basically today's cars, they kind of go into this dream state, like a good dream. Like I like the flying dreams when I'm like flying around. And when you unhook the battery or you start pulling fuses, all of a sudden in the middle of this dream, it's like having that creepy clown from It just like show up. And oftentimes that'll mask the real problem. You'll pull the fuse and the problem goes away and you think that's what's going on. Also, I found that unhooking and rehooking the battery is a lot like resetting your modem. It seems like the problem totally clears itself up, but it always comes back. So this is kind of the new way of how I do it because it doesn't involve pulling anything out. The car never knows we're here. So let's set this up. I'm gonna fire it on, and what we're gonna do is set it to the millivolt setting here. So I got my 200 millivolt there, and I know what you guys are saying. Well, we're measuring parasitic draw like amps. You know, why are we setting this on voltage? Well, the method we're going to use is measuring voltage drop across each fuse, and then we're going to use a conversion chart to see what that translates to in amps. So we're just going to stick our probes in the ports, and you'll see a momentary reading, and it should drop pretty much to 0. And you keep doing that. Look how fast that is. Little reading, go back to 0. And you want to go down every single one. If you're not sure, just test it again. And we're just going down. Okay. This beats pulling fuses any day of the week. So, yep. And some of these are dirty, so you may actually have to clean your ports to get accurate reading, especially if it's jumping. And also, if your meter has become really jumpy, especially these digital kinds, it's probably about time to buy new leads. They do get kind of cruddy after a while. Well, now that's not going away. I know there's a negative sign, but that looks like about a 6 millivolt draw right there. And again, if you don't like the negative, just switch the leads. And, you know, now this goes away. 6.1. Now that's highly suspect right there. So what I would do is take a little piece of masking tape and mark that one, just so we remember. But you want to continue testing all of these, even in the ones inside your car, because you might be one of those, like I frequently am, a progressive jackpot winner, which means you got all the electrical problems. You might actually find more than one circuit that's bad. So definitely be thorough. So say we have tested all of these, because secretly, I have a secret. Like, while you guys weren't looking, I know what you were doing. Like, while you guys were like checking out and trying to figure out why Darth Vader over there has like a dinosaur head or a raptor head on him, I snuck away and I turned something on inside the car. Yeah, I did. See, pay attention. Don't be wondering what's going on back there. So say you found your problem. How do we determine what it is? So check this out. Now we're going to use our handy dandy chart right here, and we're going to line it up with the orientation of the fuses, which oftentimes you actually have to turn it upside down in order to do this and read upside down. All right, so you can see the chart here, and we're going to match it up. It says, let's see if I can read this upside down with the glare for you guys. It says SPO, to me, roof rack lights. Like RK, you know, something about the roof lights are going on there. So let's take a look and see what, first of all, what that voltage drop converts to. If it's a big amp draw, if it's not. So let's consult the charts. There are some great resources online for fuses, conversion charts, and this is one of the more popular ones from the Power Probe site. So going across the top, we can see the colored fuses, and of course ours was that blue 15 amp one. Let's see what that 6.1 millivolt reading means in terms of amp draw. Just follow along the left-hand column here, and we're already on the second page, so you know things are about to get real here. Down to the 6.1 and across, and it looks like we have a draw of 1,332 milliamps. That's over 1 amp, so for an extended period of time, that will drain the battery. Sometimes the labels on your fuse box lids aren't really clear. They get abbreviated, space is really tight, like mine said something about a roof rack. But looking closely here at the owner's manual, you can see that fuse number 4 is actually for my roof lamps. And that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense since I turned them on. Now that I have a more meaningful name for my circuit, I can pull the right wiring diagrams, and oftentimes this is going to be more than one depending on the number of components involved. They all go into different levels of detail. So we found the problem. It was those pesky reading lights that somebody turned on. Well, I blame you guys. You guys weren't watching me. I can start all kinds of trouble when I'm not being watched. But for your scenario, it might be a little more difficult. You might hop into the car, you got your wiring diagram ready, and you start checking the components, and they look okay. I mean, the switches are off, so what could be happening? Well, now your wiring diagram, that's like a map to all the components that could potentially be involved. So you can have modules involved, lights, switches, and just start tracing each one. Now, say you're new to wiring diagrams, you have already identified the circuit, and all you have to do now, all the hard part is out of the way, is take your findings to your local repair shop, and this is the fuse, you've marked the fuse, and then they can take the testing from there and find out the problem. So to recap, you definitely want your car to be asleep when you do this, to replicate that scenario. Number 2, suspect the battery. Always suspect the battery, especially if it's a little bit older. It's older than 3 years. I know batteries can last longer than that. And, I admit I've had batteries longer than that, but begin to suspect them. Really look at that load test. Make sure it doesn't go below 10 volts. If your battery passes, the next things I begin to suspect is, have I installed any aftermarket components on my car? And that doesn't mean that the aftermarket components themselves are bad quality and they're causing all these problems. I would check radios are suspect, security systems like cameras, backup cameras, alarms, and of course, any aftermarket lighting. I'm just trying to think of all like the common stuff that I like to do to my car. So definitely check those. And if you've gone through the test and your readings aren't quite accurate and you do have these components, I suggest unhooking them all. And you might find that going down the fuses, your problem goes away. And then you can start testing each of those individually. So you know the drill. If you have comments, questions, I read all of them. If you're stuck, post it down below. My name's Rachel DeBarros, and I've had a lot of fun with you guys. You guys have been watching Gearhead Diva on the Wonderspawn Network.